And so I'm on my way over there, I guess. And I see Cliff driving in that green Volkswagen, right? So you know it's him. He's the only guy in the Bay Area that's got one of these things, right? And so he's just speeding along, and I was in my truck, and I pulled up next to him, and I go, roll down the way, hey! He goes, oh, hey! He goes, pull over. And this was on the Gilman Street exit in Berkeley. And I said, okay. So I pull up. He's by himself. I'm by myself. And we pull up to the stop sign. And he says to me, hey, can you, like, I don't know, run over and get some beers or something like that? It was something, like that. And I go, yeah, sure, no problem. All of a sudden, these two hippies start walking across the crosswalk. And there was this huge Grateful Dead show going on over at the Oakland Arena. And so obviously you got to tell they were part of that deal, even though we were in Lower Berkeley. But they came walking across it was a man and a woman, boy and girl, whatever you want to call them. They were young. They're walking across, and all of a sudden one of them yells out, hey, can we get a ride?
The hippies see him in his station wagon. It almost looks like a hippie mobile, and they see him probably looking like a hippie.
His red hair and his freaking denim on. It's like, oh, he was one of us.
Yeah, that's one of us.
And Cliff looks over at me like this, and he goes, yeah, get in. And so and then they looked and they said, where are you going? He goes, I'm going to hell, man. Get in.
Everyone, hi Cliff, how you doing?
They played the 85. They played the Kabuki, and like those are big deals because it was I think it was after Dan Green or whatever, the same time frame. So they're just about to go to the next level. But so at that time, kids knew who they were, and any other band just would have started. Maybe that would have started affecting how they would act at their own shows. Just like sequester backstage and whatever. But I remember, like, the Kabuki show was like, Ride the Lightning Tour. It was like next level stuff. And I think the second night we walked in, and Cliff was hanging out in the lobby. Like, he's the headliner. Everybody is there to see him.
Yeah.
And Cliff was hanging out in the lobby just shooting the shit with kids. He was a regular dude, and he was home. And he, it was, he was just hanging out.
But we had a lot of good times, and some of my favorite memories are just, I have a photo on the wall right here. Let me grab it. Yeah. Or just playing shows, like when we'd play a show without Metallica, these guys would be in the front row, James, Cliff, and all that. And here we go. Right here in a full-on rage headbang. Let me see. Is Cliff right there. Right there, right under my finger. And right here is James. And there's my friend Dave Conley, my dead friend Mike Street, my dead friend Ronnie Schwartz, and way in the back is Rich Birch also, so and I have photos of like Cliff and Corinne on the side of the stage, just raging, when we played like the Mabuhay Gardens, and stuff. And we always supported each other like that. We'd be in the crowd, back then, no one viewed each other as, no one was, we have to stand in the back and be cool, or where's my VIP table? We were all there the same as everybody else was,
when we arrived, like, it was just like no time had passed, like, what's going on, but like, again, it was like one of those things where like we didn't really appreciate, at least I didn't appreciate at the time, but again, it was like with James at that Maiden show and then Cliff at his own show, like kids were starstruck, and at that time, I couldn't really comprehend, like, why are you starstruck? It's just Cliff, like, sort of deal.
Cliff literally had people knocking on his door at his house with his parents asking for autographs. And the cool thing is he'd crawl out of bed at noon, put his shirt on, and go sign an autograph for a little kid. It's cool that it never changed him. Did you see any kind of change in personality with Cliff?
None. And again, even as they got as big as they did when he was with the band, like, he was still Cliff from Castro Valley,
Yeah.
And that was it. So just like in San Francisco, there was a scene, And I always thought it was cool that those guys had a great scene out there, and they loved metal. You know, I'll never forget the first time we went there and meeting all these other people from other bands, and they were all for that movement. You know what I mean? Metal, and it was just a way of life. And yeah, I had so much respect for all those bands up there. They were doing it, you know, and it was a great scene.
But you know, it's not that people didn't recognize him, but because there is a story, there's another story where, like, you know, around that 84, 85, when things were about to happen, and there's this local San Jose skater band called The Faction, and they're pretty legendary because, like, the main guy is Steve Caballero, and so anyway, but like they're a local skate punk band, and like they were playing in downtown San Jose, and they were playing at like, it was like a rec center. But we went to see him because like they're like one of the new local punk bands. And Cliff showed up because Yngwie Malmsteen, if I remember correctly, Yngwie was playing down the street at the San Jose Civic, and this rec hall or whatever was on the way, and the friends he was with knew about the show. So Cliff showed up at the show, and like my friend and I were like, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing here? And like one of the friends who was with him, I had forgotten this part about it, but years later, a mutual friend who was at the show, like, remembered like some of the punks tried to start a fight with Cliff because he was a long hair, because he was a long hair, and like, you know, long hairs didn't belong at punk shows. So like these punks started messing with Cliff at this Faction show because he was like a long haired whatever. And then like one of the punks recognized him. Like, so it was like at that moment when like people outside of the metal scene were becoming aware of Metallica. So even at this rec center punk show, like one of the punks recognized Cliff and told the other dudes, like, dude, like
back off.
He's cool. Like, don't. But like Cliff didn't care. Like Cliff just took it in stride.
It's funny too, because Cliff is a punk himself.
Yeah, but that's what's so ironic too. Like if the punks don't need, like he was more ahead of the curve with punk than those kids were, probably, because, you know, he was in the Misfits and Discharge and all that stuff. So it's pretty, but again, like that's, you can't tell a book by its cover. And like, you know, just what we were talking about before, where like, you know, people just always say like Cliff was the most metal member of Metallica, and like he wasn't. Like he was the most punk member of Metallica, if anything. So I mean, it's just like, again, like around that time frame, 84, 85, when, you know, there was like this little shining moment when it was just our scene, and it was just our little scene for like summer 84 or so. And then after that's when things started going like that. And so then that's when things like that started happening, where, you know, Cliff would get recognized in public at an underground punk show in a, you know, maybe 50 people in a rec center in downtown San Jose, and like somebody knew who he was.
You could definitely feel there was something happening, but when you're in the moment, you don't really think too much about it because you're just in the moment, and it is what it is. But you could feel there was an underground thing. But again, we never in a million years ever thought this was going to be anything other than just a big underground thing.
When was the first time you arrived at a venue and realized that this is starting to get really big?
You could tell there was something going on with the band at the beginning. When we turn up at little venues, people were queuing around the corner. You know, and you didn't. I'd toured those venues, some of those venues before, and you never had that. You didn't see the level of, you know, conviction of the fans. And the band really, they were really good with the kids. You know, they would always talk to everybody and sign whatever they wanted. They would sit there. They would stay after the gig had finished and carry on signing stuff.
How do you think they got so big in those smaller states, smaller cities? Because no internet back then, no MySpace, no Facebook. Like, how did the news travel?
Because they would play there all the time. This is I've told bands for years. I mean, it's a little bit different now, like you said, with YouTube and stuff. But Metallica played everywhere. Even in the early days, they would go to North Dakota or South Dakota or Montana or places that bands don't go. Boise, Idaho. I mean, they would always do that, and that's a big reason why they were as big as they were, because they would go to these places even when they were huge.
The second I hear that song, I see Dan the Green, and I see, hey, everybody say hi to Cliff, you know, and then
Hi, Cliff, how you doing?
Yeah, and then it kicks into that. And I never forget the people just start tearing up that turf. They start going crazy. Bill Graham's furious. What the hell is going on? And it was the changing of the guard, and it just had so much to do with Cliff, but that chemistry finally coming together.
You also say that Cliff's energy on stage produced the band to have higher energy as well. Like he brought the element.
Absolutely. Like I said, Cliff used to entertain them as much as he would entertain the audience. You know, he was Cliff's natural default. Just him playing. He couldn't, I don't think he could really play, just stand and play. He would have to headbang in some way or other, you know, whether there was anybody around or not. I mean, even when he was in his hotel room and he was on the bed jumping up and down, he was headbanging there on his own, his room, you know. So him on stage was really, what he did up there was his default setting of just playing his bass. So, and you couldn't help but watch what he was doing because he never stopped. With the long hair and, you know, the flares, unique personality with a unique approach to absolutely everything he did, really.
So how old were you on that day, August 30th, 1985?
I just got out of high school, so I would say I was 19 because 84 was the graduation year, and then summer, you know, probably 19, working. I got some pictures from that. I'm in the parking lot with some buddies.
Sick.
We're drinking, and I remember Bill Graham pulled up in a golf cart, and you know, we were there early, like 9 a.m. And he pulled up in this golf cart and he goes, "Hey, go inside before you get in trouble." And we're like, "Holy shit, that's Bill Graham!"
That's Bill Graham.
And you know, we're minors drinking in the lot. That's what you did. You got to Dan the Green, you drank, you maybe drove the Malibu cars. They had a Malibu Grand Prix next to it.
Nice.
And then we went in.
You know, it just went off. And then so like I think it all culminated when they played Dan the Green in '85, because like everything that had been building, like they'd been away and come back, and they put out Ride the Lightning, and then they played Dan the Green. And, you know, Dan the Green, you know, when you grew up in the Bay Area, it was like, it was sort of like it was a rite of passage to attend the Dan the Green, because, you know, it was at Oakland Stadium. It was all day, you know, in high school, junior high, my friend and I, we would leave. We lived in the burbs. We lived in Sunnyvale. We would leave like at midnight to go get in line, because, you know, that it was back then, you know, we were the age where like you have to be up front, you know, if you're at a concert, you have to be up front, and, you know, in order to do that, you had to get there early. So, you know, we'd leave the house at midnight, get in line, like, you know, at Oakland Stadium at 2 a.m. or whatever. And, you know, back then, Dan the Green, the first band would go on at 10 a.m. Which is unheard of now. Like, you know, like the first band would go on at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, but it was a rite of passage. Like any kid who was into rock music in the Bay Area in that generation, you know, you go to a Dan the Green because, you know, every band would play it. And, you know, it was, if you didn't go, you weren't cool almost.
Day on the Green being quite significant because it was in Oakland, just miles away from Cliff Burton's hometown of Castro Valley. So for him to see that stage, you know, as a child, go to those ball games, and then at the age of 23 be on that stage, has to be incredibly magical for him and all his friends who are in the audience.
You know, I think when you look at the footage of it, you know, that the famous shot of Cliff with his foot on the wedge, you could see they're all having a great time. It was electric, you know, it was fun, and good times. Cliff was just, well, Cliff performed for himself, I think. I don't know for sure. I don't know if anybody else has said anything, but as much as he was performing for the audience, it's like he was entertaining the band as well. You know what I mean? They all looked to Cliff. Once that hair started flying and that big headbang went on, it's like, whoa, you know? I mean, it's like the first time he stamped on his Morley wah-wah pedal. I'm like, what is that? Because it was like probably times 10 the volume that the bassing beat. And it wasn't a case of featuring it as a solo, turning it up. It was a case of turning it down when the Morley came on. It wasn't a case of going, oh, he's playing a solo. There was no question he was playing a solo or doing some sound effects. He did some fantastic sound effects with that Morley. From absolutely nowhere, you would have like a "ow" happen or something where he just stamped on it for a second. But it really, really was exciting stuff, and it worked. You know, he was unique, and I've never heard it since, and I'm sure I won't. You know, it was just Cliff doing what Cliff did.
I mean, like I said, Bell Tolls is a total game changer as far as this beautiful showpiece for Cliff Burton.
Yeah, bass-driven song.
Oh yeah, and it's just the Morley and the way he really digs into it live, where he really with the long throw on the Morley, like the wow, bum, bum, wow, you know, it's I've studied that footage. I was at the show, but I've watched that footage over and over, and I've looked at the set list on the side of the amps. I looked at those orange ice coolers up there.
The little cooler he carried with him.
Yeah. And I'm watching Lars just fucking kill it and seeing his dreams come true. The dude from Europe, you know, and just Hetfield, you know, up there. He's still not the mighty Hetfield yet.
He's still relying on Cliff. He looks over to Cliff to like get that courage, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, for Metallica to play A Day in the Green, it was mind blowing because you know it was like something that we had all grown up attending, and then all of a sudden our friends were playing A Day in the Green, and then you know, and then they played there. You know, how many ever 45,000 people were there that day or something. So it wasn't just like the core, however many thousand, maybe 1,000, because you know the scene in our heads was big, but in reality, it was
funny to hear the story where Cliff's at home, just kind of jamming in his bedroom, getting ready. I guess his girlfriend's there, and then his mom or somebody comes in and goes, "Well, what time you got to be there?" And he goes, "Oh, now!" And I heard he got in his he had like a junker truck or VW or something. He's driving, and then he gets there, and there's like traffic, and he just gets out and starts running all the way around backstage, and then he doesn't have a pass. You know,
they don't think he's actually in a band.
Yeah, I'm going on, and they're like, "Yeah, get out of here," you know. So I don't know if that's real, but that was a great story I had read about 10 years ago about Cliff's experience of going to the Day in the Green, and I could just imagine Cliff, you know, just sitting there getting ready, and then like
smoking a joint or something.
Yeah, no concept of time. Like, oh my God, I got to be there now. You know, it's wild. And then they destroyed the dressing room, and Bill was furious, said you'll never play again. And then James had to go to Bill's office Monday. Yeah, I love all that story. And then next time they fucking headline there, he covers the whole backstage in plastic as a joke. So.
It was the sort of thing where like I went to work like the next week or something, and some guy, you know, some coworker was there, and he was at the Day in the Green to see Scorpion. You know, he was there to see the headliner, you know, the bands who were being played on the radio. And he had come away from that show being a Metallica fan. So that's how it's supposed to work. You know, you play a big show when you're a smaller band, and then you get that many more fans.
Yeah.
But again, how accelerated things were back then. It just seemed like, the golden year of 84 when it was still our scene, you know, and then 85, especially around here after they played Dan the Green, it was just like this.
Boom.
It was
Metallica shirts everywhere walking down the street.
Everywhere. At least, you know, in the Bay Area. And plus, you know, it played in the, you know, hometown pride.
You know, man, like I said, when I was talking to you on the phone, I just think that one of the greatest memories of all time for me is that Day on the Green, and I'll never forget it. And it was really a day that probably pushed me to think like, shit, man, they did it maybe I can do it. And it pushed me to keep going. It's like they made it. And here I am at 55, still doing art and still trying to make it. But you know, you got that fuel in you from those dudes in that day. And that day was a really, really magic day because you could think about that band could have went on and anything could happen. You could choke. You could go on and maybe the giant scorpions rat crowd don't understand it. You know, the suburbs kids or whatever, but it was the day that they came out with both fists swinging and everybody in there left and changed their lives. Everyone in that place. I know it for a fact, you know, because if you run into anybody, it's a lot like Woodstock. They're like, oh yeah, Metallica that day. Oh man, bells toll. Oh, you know, that's it, man. That is it. That is the high water mark of metal right in there that day.